This is where we left in the previous video by installing JWT and Passport Local. So let's continue with the implementation. One thing by default that Passport does not provide is the user registration, which means that unless we do it by ourselves. So let's go ahead and create a route and a controller for it. And for this one, we have done it under the part 1 of this course, or part 2. Alright, so let's go ahead and create one folder for users. And I'm going to create the file as users or user controller. And here we will need the user model, unless I resave the file to have the auto import. Save it and let's bring in the user model. So here we are going to export the controller as an object as we have done before. So I will say const user controller is equal to an object. And here we're going to have one controller for registration, other one for logging in, and we're going to have one for profile and also password reset and others. But for the meantime, let's focus on the authentication part of it. So here we are going to create the register controller and assign by using async handler. And for this one, we have done it also. So here, let's copy the async handler and use it here. And let me bring this one up here. And I will say user controller as that. Alright, so here we will need the async handler package. And then we are going to wrap it inside our callback function as async, and then rec response. And here we go. Since we are using async await, we don't need to bring in try and catch. So let's look at the steps. Step number 1 is that we need to check if the email already exists or the username already exists. And then after that, we need to hash the user password. And then lastly, send the response. So how are we going to check the username if it exists? So here, let's go ahead and destructure what we need upon registration. So here, let's look at the user model. We will need the email, password, and then the username, and that is it. So here, let's go ahead and destructure username, email, and then the password, which is equal to rec.body. So to check, we are going to find the user by username. So here as const user found is equal to await the user model dot find one, and we are going to find by the username, and also we want to find by the email. This means that if username or email exists, then it means that this user is being registered. So here we will say that if user found, then we will go ahead and throw new error. Alright, and last step is that we need to hash the user password. So we need what is called bcrypt for the hashing. So let's go ahead and then install that package. It's going to be npm I bcrypt.js, and let's install that. And let's go ahead and then require the package as bcrypt, which is equal to require the bcrypt package. So how are we going to hash the user password? First of all, we need to create what is called hashed. So here is going to be as hashed password, which is equal to await the bcrypt package. On that, we have a method called hash, and here we pass in what we want to hash. In this case, we want to hash the password, and then provide 10 for the algorithm, and that is it. So next step is that we need to register the user. So here we will say that register the user, and we are going to use Mongoose method called user.create. So here as user.create, and then as an object pass in what we want to create. We will need username, email, and then the password. But for the password, we don't want to save the plain password, but instead the hashed password. So let's await this and then assign to a variable as user registered, which is equal to this. And last step is let's send the response as res.status provide 201, meaning created, and then JSON by providing a message, or let me begin with the status. We will say success, and then the message as user registered successfully, and let's send the user registered. All right, so let's go ahead and then export the registration controller, which is equal to user controller. So now we need to mount it inside the router. So we are going to create one folder under the route for users or user, and let's create the users router.js, and we will need the express. As you can see at this point, we are just repeating ourselves because we are done with the foundation. The formats are going to be the same. So here we are going to create what is called users router, which is equal to express.router. And here is going to be, let's begin with the registration or register as user router.post. And here we're going to provide /register. And then the controller as user controller.register. All right, so let's export. Module.export is equal to the users router. And last step is let's mount it inside the server file. This is for the post. So let's duplicate and change this one to users router, which is this, and it follows the same base endpoint. So we need to provide /users, yes, as base endpoint. And I think even for the post, we can specify /post here. Let me check here. Yes, you can see we also have the common endpoint here as post here. So let me remove this one from here. I think, yeah. And this one is for /. Yeah, and this is like that. So inside here, we have to provide the base endpoint here as post. So now we are done with the registration. It's time for us to test our luck. So let me create one folder, or let me duplicate this one and then change this one to users, and let me delete these guys, and let's have one for the register, and the endpoint is /users and /register. Now let's provide the username, and I will say Masintech, and then provide email as masintech@gmail.com, and then the password, which is 12345, and register. Well, we got some error, meaning that our server is not running. Let's check. Indeed, it is not running, so let's run it. And let's try again. And we got success, meaning that I have been registered. If I try again, as you can see, user already exists. If you check inside our database, you're going to see the user being registered. For me, I'm using the local connection string. So here inside my users, let's see, as you can see, the user is being registered. So in case you have MongoDB being installed locally, then you can use the local connection string. Otherwise, you can still use the live one. It doesn't change the main logic. As you can see, I have been registered with my username and other properties as that. And this is a password that has been hashed. So now, what has left is logging in. This is where Passport comes in. Passport is going to allow us to log in without us writing the code from scratch. But instead, we also need to set up Passport to use our logic to be able to log in. Let's continue in the next video.